An independent home power system does not create electricity simply because it is compact, modern, or disconnected from the grid. Every usable watt still has to come from somewhere, and understanding that source is the difference between evaluating a real energy system and believing a vague claim. That matters because the phrase independent power can sound almost magical. A device appears in a garage, on a wall, or beside an appliance. It powers a light, a phone begins charging. Maybe a refrigerator starts running. From the outside, it can look as though the system itself is somehow producing electricity on demand. But what you are seeing is only the final step. Before electricity reaches that appliance, energy has to be captured, converted, stored, regulated, and delivered in a form the device can actually use, and each stage introduces its own limitations. Most people begin thinking about independent power for one of two reasons. The first is cost. They look at an electricity bill, try to reduce consumption, and wonder whether part of their household demand could come from somewhere other than the utility. The second is reliability. A storm arrives, the grid fails, the refrigerator goes silent, the router shuts down. Phones begin losing charge. Suddenly, having another source of electricity feels much more practical than theoretical. At that point, people naturally start looking at small home energy systems, generators, batteries, solar equipment, and other alternatives. But these systems are often grouped together, even though they do very different jobs. A battery stores energy. A generator converts energy from another source into electricity. Solar equipment captures energy from sunlight and converts it into electrical energy. Some systems combine generation, storage, conversion, and control in one setup. That distinction is important because storing electricity is not the same as generating it. If a battery was charged from the grid yesterday and powers your refrigerator today, the battery did not create that electricity. It stored electricity that already existed. That can still be extremely useful during an outage. But it is a different mechanism from producing electricity from an independent source. This is where the deeper structure becomes important. Before a home power system can support an appliance, 4 basic things need to happen. First, there has to be an energy source. That could be sunlight, fuel, previously stored electrical energy, or another legitimate source depending on the system. Second, that energy has to be converted into usable electricity. Third, the electricity may need to be stored so it remains available when the original source is not immediately accessible. And fourth, the system has to deliver that electricity at the voltage and form required by the connected devices. The real issue isn't whether a system can make a light turn on. It's where the energy came from and whether the system can keep supplying it under real household demand. That changes the questions you should ask. Instead of asking whether a device generates power, ask what actually supplies the energy. If sunlight is involved, how is that energy collected? If fuel is involved, how is it converted? If the system uses a battery, how is that battery charged? If the system claims to reduce dependence on the electrical grid, what source replaces the grid electricity? Those questions expose the mechanism, and mechanisms matter because energy systems cannot escape basic limits. A small independent setup may be perfectly capable of powering a few low-demand devices. LED lighting may require relatively little electricity. Phones and communication equipment may also be manageable. A refrigerator creates a more demanding situation because its compressor can require a brief increase in power when it starts. Large electric heaters, cooking appliances, dryers, and central air conditioning systems can require much more. So even when the energy source is legitimate, the next limitation is output. Output tells you how much electrical demand the system can support at one moment. Then there is capacity. Capacity helps determine how long stored energy can continue supporting those devices. These two ideas are easy to confuse. Imagine a system that can deliver enough power to start a refrigerator. That tells you something about output. It does not automatically tell you whether the system can keep the refrigerator operating throughout the night. A different system may contain a useful amount of stored energy, but still be unable to provide the brief surge needed by a demanding appliance. That is why a demonstration can be misleading if you do not know what it proves. Seeing an appliance operate for several minutes proves that the system can support that particular load under those conditions. It does not prove unlimited runtime, it does not prove that several additional appliances can be added, and it does not explain where the next round of energy will come from once storage is depleted. Independent power becomes more practical when you stop thinking about the entire home as one load. A household contains dozens of different electrical needs. During an outage, you might decide refrigeration matters most. Communication may come next. Basic lighting may be important. Some households may also need to consider medical equipment or temperature-sensitive medication. That is a very different objective from trying to run every appliance normally. A compact system does not need to replace the electrical grid to provide useful independence. It may simply create a second layer. When grid electricity is available, the home operates normally. When it disappears, selected essential functions can potentially continue using another source. That limited independence can also make energy discussions more realistic. If the goal is reducing electricity purchased from the utility, an independent system must supply energy that would otherwise have come from the grid. Simply charging a battery from the grid and discharging it later does not create a new source of electricity. It changes when stored electricity is used. A different source supplying part of the household demand changes the structure more fundamentally. This is why the source matters more than the appearance of the equipment. A small box may contain storage, conversion electronics, controls, or several components together. But the physical box is not the real story. The real story is the flow of energy, where it begins, how it is converted, where it is stored, what the system can deliver, and what happens when the available energy runs out. Once those questions are answered, independent home power becomes much easier to understand. It is not about producing electricity from nothing. It is about creating another controlled pathway from a real energy source to the household devices that matter. There is a structured breakdown in the description for anyone who wants to explore home power systems more carefully. Subscribe for more practical explanations about backup electricity, grid dependence, and household energy. Reliable independence begins with understanding where the energy actually comes from.